I think we're live. Cool.
Excellent.
Awesome. Let me check that. I will double check just to make sure. And yes, we are. Awesome. James, glad to have you here on this show. I don't know if we can call this a show because I haven't had any previous guests. Mainly because you're the guest that I wanted to have first
Oh,
uh,
thank you.
for a couple months. Yeah, I'm super happy to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I know we wanted to connect for a while, so I'm glad that we're able to get this going. I'm super excited to
Sure.
talk with you today.
Sure, definitely, man. So yeah, the reason I wanted to have you on the show is because um, to me, I've been writing about through Soci3 through my newsletter, the Discord, and all these things. I've been writing about um, online organizing techniques and managing communities using tools from Web3 and how you can design these organizations so that it makes sense to a community, whether it's like a creators community or something else. And for a long time, I've really appreciated the way Abridged, the philosophy and the approach that Abridged has taken since the early days of being listening a lot to the consumer, or to the customer at least, because I think you've started with non-consumer people. Maybe you can chat a bit about that. But yeah, this philosophy that you've taken and to integrate with this Discord and Telegram tools and chats that have enabled now like hundreds and hundreds of communities, I guess, to be tokenized communities to allow their community members to jump in using the token they hold in their wallets. So yeah, I think that's that opens up like many different things that we can chat about. There are tons of things like social tokens is one thing for sure, but building for communities is one thing. Building for Web3 developers, another thing that we could talk about, and the future of all these things, and the intersection that all these things are kind of getting over time with like the creator economy. But yeah, enough chatting and presentation. Yeah, I'd love you to kind of like introduce yourself, a bit about your background, your history. I know you have a long history in Web 2 and Web 3. This has, I'm sure, like shaped your profile in some way. And I'd love to hear a bit more about Abridged and how you guys came to where you are now.
Sure. Yeah, appreciate it. A little bit about my background. I started out in tech on the video streaming infrastructure side, part of a couple of startups that had successful exits, and moved from video streaming. This is the days when like Flash, it's actually no longer existing. Was the way that you were able to embed video on a web page, and was dealing with video infrastructure. And as the web moved to just text and pics only to more video centric, initially through Flash, I moved toward that, and that actually shaped kind of my career trajectory. I was a back-end developer, infrastructure architect, and then moved toward more of the front end because of Flash. And from that, got into social gaming. And, from like a back-end tech side, when you pull out enough, the technology and what you need to do is kind of the same. So moved to social gaming, went to company Zynga, launched Farmville, and it's actually kind of poignant because Farmville is actually closing down at the end of this month. So there's all this stuff on social media about the closure of Farmville and the original team and everything like that. So it's quite interesting. Went from social gaming to online advertising because I really opened my eyes at Zynga about ads and like really what runs the internet. I was solely focused on the dev side and started looking at the economics and what drives the economics, and was fascinated with where the online advertising industry was going when it comes to exchanges. So really quickly, online advertising works kind of like a stock exchange or a crypto exchange, actually, when you're buying and selling ads.
Yeah.
So that was really fascinating. And at that time, Ethereum had the mainnet launch. There was all this news about the original DAO, and the concept of a DAO really fascinated me from like a permissionless and like organizational perspective. I was in online advertising, helped co-write the white paper for AdChain, which described or formalized a token curated registry. And I guess my kind of journey into crypto has always been, I know what I think the problem is to solve, and then realizing when I'm solving that problem, there's actually a deeper underlying problem to chase. And so I originally thought, okay, if you get the game theory right and the mechanism design right of a token, then, you can have a self-sustaining economy and everything is great. And that's what the TCR was. And what I found out and realized is that, from a UI UX perspective, and this is where my gaming background comes in. Like when we first started on AdChain, it took 3 on-chain transactions just to play the TCR game. And that was like a minute and a half. And so that was not really acceptable, and said, okay, well, how are we going to scale this? And so from AdChain went to SpankChain, was the VP of engineering there, dealing with payment channels, and launched the first payment channel on Ethereum mainnet.
Gotcha.
When we're looking at the stats and data, and I think Dapper Labs and CryptoKitties can echo similar sentiment, was that there's this huge drop-off rate. So I thought, okay, scalability. So game design wasn't the problem to solve; it was like kind of scalability. With the launch of the first payment channel solution on ETH, what I realized was it's a usability thing. And we had like these huge drop-offs. And so we're like, okay, well, the actual problem to solve is UI UX. So when it started Abridged,
the whole loop, like from game design to scalability to usability to UX.
That's right. Yeah. So with Abridged, and we initially built this SDK was to solve the onboarding hurdle. At the same time, was still fascinated in organizations and DAOs, and helped write the Mullet contract. Was part of a core team there, and we launched the original Mullet contract. Just because I was just fascinated, and that's really what got me into Ethereum, was this like coordination and ability to organize. And based off of like how Mullet launched, at the beginning, we're like, okay, wouldn't it be great if we had like $1 million equivalent of ETH kind of pooled in a contract? And we're like, that will never happen. That would take such a long time. And we were able to achieve that in like 3 months. So we're like, okay, there's something there. That was a decent demand signal. So had that in the back of my mind, working on Bridge, the tooling, and the SDK. And what we found out was, we can actually create a great dev experience. When you're in the tooling game, you rely on other developers to be able to, create that consumer product. So we were kind of one removed, and I was just itching to actually do something more consumer facing. And this was just at the very beginnings of social tokens. Actually, Amin Soleimani was on this, I think it was at UC Berkeley, was on this panel, and there was someone from the SEC, and he had asked them, well, are personal tokens a security? The SEC didn't give the person there didn't give a straight answer, but like didn't give like an outright no. So that was like, okay, there could be something here with personal tokens. And at the time we were just calling them YOLOs. You want to just YOLO yourself. And
Yeah.
so I was like, it's fascinating. And then roles started to emerge. And as we launched Moloch DAO, in the background, we also launched the Meta Cartel DAO. And Alex Mazmej was in Meta Cartel and decided to just have his own token. And so I think Amin and Peter Pan also created their own token, but they weren't as gung-ho and experimental as Alex. And so with that, was talking with Alex, and we're like, okay, what can we do with DAOs, and what can we do with tokens and our tooling? And that's kind of what started this notion of just Collabland. With Collabland, we have a bunch of tooling on the shelf. You can like launch a Moloch DAO and Aragon DAO. You can do proposals, you can do voting, but we had to like pare it down to that kind of like its most basic essence. And that was how we came up with token permission chat. And really it was a forcing function because we were like, okay, once we solved this like problem of UI UX, which we kind of deferred in Collabland and we assumed that people already have tokens.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to lower the barrier for not only development, but for outreach. And we're like, all these people are on Telegram, and now we're seeing them becoming a lot more active on Discord. But we're like, how are they coordinating? So let's just create a bot, because not only is it a UI UX issue, when you think about it for crypto, it's really a distribution issue. So in the background over the years, I looked at other sites like, Peepeth, that wants to be the like decentralized Twitter. And, from my experience in Web 2, distribution is pretty hard. I think that distribution was a lot easier maybe 10 or even 15 years ago, when these networks weren't all like solidified. And so what we said was, let's just create a bot. Let's go to where people already are. And so that we can minimize the design and the front end of having to create a site and all of that and recreate chat and all of those features. Let's not create our own social network, but go to where they already are. So that's where kind of the kind of germ of like Collabland started. And let's just start with the most basic thing. What do people want? People want to be able to talk to other token holders. And it's amazing that, when that happened and, there's these like emergent design, like with Meme, they're like, okay, what are we going to do? Let's just launch a token. They launched it on Twitter. And then the only feature was a token permission chat group, really at the beginning. They decided once they got into that group what to build, and they created this whole thing of like NFT farming, right? And so like, I think there's power in knowing, and it's a psychological effect, I think, knowing that the people that you're talking to in that chat room are other token holders, and it creates this like higher quality or a bar of conversation.
That's interesting, because like when from the sidelines, not having the whole background on what you guys had been doing for so long, and just seeing like the final. I just came in and kind of met with you guys at the moment where Collabland was in the pipelines. I remember like at the beginning of last summer, I was in touch with the team and kind of playing around with the Node-RED thing that you guys had made available to some users to kind of like customize their bots and all these things in Telegram first, I guess. But yeah, to me, like coming from an Aragon background and a DAO, same as you, like the idea of a DAO, I think at first like really fascinated me, like the idea that, someone could just go online and contribute to different, groups of people, communities, who are just like about gathering around a shared, purpose or whatever, and just like make a living from that, instead of like, I'm someone like who would hate like going to a regular 9 to 5, and to me like this is a way to kind of free up many people from, you know, and just let them do what they want and empower them to do what they want. And so I really saw, and so we've been building many different DAO frameworks. You have like Aragon DAO Stack, Moloch as well, and all these are. I mean, Moloch is pretty light, but in general, like pretty heavy infrastructure plays and stuff. And what I really loved when I saw Collabland was that, you know, to me was the DAO, but like 100 times lighter. You know, it's just like this kind of lean approach of just going with a Discord bot or a Telegram bot, you know, and just like you just have to implement this thin layer, you know, delimiting community members, and you know, they have this thing in common that they're belonging to a community because they hold these tokens, as you said, and now like the community can exist, and things can happen, you know, energy can stack up in these boundaries on these discords, these Telegram chats, and people start chatting and they start building and they start imagining new things, and now you can, you know, start a conversation with them. You guys, as you're also, I think as a, you know, as a product, as a team, like so well positioned to, because really like you've been providing so much value to all these communities. I mean, some of which are participate too, but I guess like there are like hundreds of groups that I don't really know of today. So yeah, I really liked this, you know, the fact that I was like, you know, in fact, it was like almost this simple in a way, you know. The idea of a DAO is like a huge theoretical complex thing, and you know, you can see a DAO in many different things, like Ethereum is a DAO, or you know, Jam Session, or Whale or whatever is a DAO in another way. So yeah, I really was fascinated by that, and yeah, I mean, having this position, I think that's an interesting position to have in this space currently, because like since last summer, I mean, things have been going pretty quickly and pretty wide. Like the space has been. I'm wondering, like, when did you first like understand like we're onto something? There's something happening here, or we get some traction. Communities are expecting to emerge and stuff. Like, yeah, I'm super curious about that.
Yeah. So for me, this is just waiting. To me, when I saw the original concept of the DAO, and you know, the game theoretical issues aside, just the concept and just seeing really the demand, I think at that time, ETH was what, like it popped to like 20 cents at that time, and there was around, I think the value held in the DAO, this was summer of 2016, was like peaked at like 20 mil. And I was like, there is definitely something here. Like, this is what it's about, you know? And this is a way that people will coordinate. And I've been online for many years. And what struck me was this like issue of like, you know, people wanted to do it for the technology's sake. And, you know, it didn't work out, obviously, and we had the hard fork and whatnot. But like, it was a great experiment, and that energy is not something that I had seen since like the beginning of the web, right? And the emergence of Web 2.0. And I was like, this is what I've been waiting for. I didn't know how it would manifest. This is why I was interested in building out like Moloch as well. Just something really small. We need so many more experiments. And this is what gets me really excited now, because I feel like, you know, we're in the early days of this like community, social tokens, whatever you want to call it. So this has been 4 years in the waiting, and I'm just looking for the market opportunities, and the market is finally starting to catch up. I think that in the backdrop of like, you know, the pandemic, it's accelerated people to like coordinate online. I think that tokens, when I think about it, there are a couple of things that are happening. You have the creator passion economy rising. You have these like private social networks emerging. You have people that like it's hard to tell nowadays the difference really between Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like they're all kind of have stories, and they're all kind of like going to blend into this big morass of things. And so we now have close to a decade and a half at least of, normalizing social media. And so with that, people are going to like try to figure out how to like better communicate online. And the way I see tokens are just for like crypto, or not for crypto, but for influencers or creators, just a potential another revenue stream, right? Because now you understand, and people are beginning to see, it's getting harder and harder to make a full-time living, on YouTube or on these platforms. And crypto can serve as another revenue stream, just like a Patreon or a Substack or like an OnlyFans. And so I think there's that aspect, and also there's this aspect of like trust. And I think trust, when I really peel things back and I try to go back to kind of the human condition online, that's really hard. And so people can have badges, and like if you go to Discourse or you go to Reddit, you see, how long someone has been active and how many posts that they've done, how much karma that they have. There are these signals, and crypto, I think, is just another signal to be able to understand and be able to evaluate a community or individuals in the community, how much you can trust them. And I think we need to get away from like, the price action, right? And things like that, and have metrics that are crypto based, that are more like how long has the average community token holder held, right? So if the chart is really high and the price action goes up, but the average token holder only is held for a short amount of time, you're like, that's a little sus, right? Like you're like, I don't really want to trust that community. But if it's a steady price, token holders have held for a long time, you look and you see there's active interaction within Discord or Telegram, then you're like, okay. And they have these values and statements that you kind of, are interesting for you. Yeah. And you're like, okay, I want to join this community. So it's really getting those type of metrics, right? And I think that it's a little bit different. And for Collabland, what we're seeing is needing to create the foundation building blocks. So, in this last summer, all the news was about like DeFi.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And so DeFi, though, I think needed things to happen. Like you needed a DEX, you needed a stable coin, you needed a way to, provide some type of yield, right? So you have Uniswap, you have DAI, you have Compound. These kind of ingredients, these building blocks allowed DeFi to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And I think the same thing is going to happen on social, but the building blocks that we need for social are going to be grounded in UI UX, right? It's going to be about usability. And that's what we're trying to promote. I'm also working on this other project called DAOFi, and super fascinating because it's going to be the first DEX that is solely focused on community tokens. And you'll be able to parameterize the curve, so it's not about just a token mooning, and have it be in the context of people that like maybe just want to join a group, right? And so I think that these new building blocks that are occurring, also really excited about what's happening at like Unite, and being able to like just airdrop tokens. And I think leveraging these distribution channels that already exist are going to be key, instead of like trying to move everyone and deplatform everyone off of like Twitter, for example, and create your own Twitter.
So that's something like, I mean, you have said so many things that, I don't know, like if I should stop you at some point or just like let you keep, because, but yeah, I mean, coming back to one thing you said earlier, like that, between like the Twitters or, some social platform or some sort of marketplace with social features, or some tokenized communities today, like you kind of like, you're wondering like what is, I mean, definitely like there's this A16Z article that came out recently about, you know, social plus or whatever. And you know, the fact that social was still like eating the world and all these things. And so I'm wondering, like, on the longer time scale, like for now we're with, you know, all this, so we're very focused on social tokens. But so to me, like, that's why I, you know, Soci3, the kind of logo is a Lego base plate, and in fact,
Mhm.
we call that the base plate for things to be built on top. And community logos as, you know, things like Collabland, that enable, like, you know, to build like with building blocks and stuff. And so I'm wondering, like, because there seems to be a continuum of like communities, like on the one hand, like you have maybe like tokenized communities, and on the other end of the spectrum you have, like, I don't know, like these marketplaces, or that are getting social, and both are like communities in the end. Like everything is becoming a community, and value is built at the level of communities. So I'm wondering, like, um, what you think is the direction, you know, of this. Today we're like with the Discord, and we're with you know, social tokens, and that's, these are the two main components, with a couple of other ones like governance things, like DeFi things that communities or creators may leverage in different ways. Um, but yeah, I'm still trying to wonder if, like, at some point these things are going to be integrated. Like we want to deplatform Twitter, people from Twitter and from Facebook and whatever. But tomorrow, like, once, like, you know, they want it can be, these things could be integrated, like being open source and available to all, like, and they could, you know, implement those features inside the platforms and make them the new communities. So I'm kind of wondering, like, how you see that evolving.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that your logo is a Lego base plate, because I think that is what the crypto Ethereum can become. It's
Sure.
that substrate, right? And so you put in, from a distribution perspective, the Facebook silo on top of that base plate. You put, you know, TikTok on top of that base plate. Tomorrow it may be Clubhouse, and who knows what it's going to be 5 years from now. But if you have everyone that is connected to each other via tokens,
Yeah.
on this permissionless blockchain, this base plate, then you don't have to make bets about what's going to be the next platform, the next silo, right? You can actually move them across. And I think that is this subtle difference where, you know, it's hard to understand and imagine, like, the community sovereignty aspect of it, where the community has their own economy. The distribution platform is not what mediates that community. It's the token. And the community can move fluidly between different silos. And I think instead of guessing what's the next thing, is it going to be VR? Is it going to be audio only? Is it what's this next thing? Let the market decide. If they're tokenized, you can move the audience and they'll be incentivized, because, you know, there's this financial aspect when it comes to it. And so it's not the platform mediating it.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't agree more with that statement. I think, like, a very, you know, a concrete analogy for the present days is, like, you know, the vampire mining attack that, you know, Soci3 made against Uniswap. Like, to me, was really like, you know, you have like two offers with more or less the same utility or the same value. Now, like, you see, Soci3 had to compensate for the network effects that it didn't have. And so it had to put in the, you know, the promotion, kind of like, you know, it's on sale kind of ticker to let people know that, you know, they could jump on and reap some profits and whatever. And I mean, apart from the fact that, you know, I think, like, I'm not a big fan of, like, this kind of like mercenary kind of type of behaviors, where it's just about, you know, reaping some money off, you know, a very short period of time, and more into like building communities for the longer term with the right metrics inside. I think that's definitely. I mean, that's at least that's what I hope it's going to be, because if that's, you know, if that's the direction we're taking, that it means that, like, you know, the value is really on the social side of things, like 100%. and really, it really depends whether you'll move to from one platform to another. Um, it will mean like I want to be with this group or with that group, and in the end, like the platform are just going to be the tools. So that's kind of like the vision I really buy in, with the things that, for example, like you guys are building, and the hope that I have for the space, moving forward.
Yeah, I think the strongest communities are the ones that are going to be the most diversified in terms of number of token holders and number of distribution platforms that they're on, right? So they're not beholden to just one distribution platform. When you think about kind of the organization structure, and I think this is what a lot of people don't really understand. And I think you have some keen insight into, and this is what kind of compels me is like, how do humans coordinate, right? So you had this like corporate man, like, before, and the idea was you had like, one company that you worked at and you climbed up the ladder there and you got promoted and you retire, right?
The life I don't want.
yeah. You can imagine someone holding a briefcase, driving to the office all day. And I think that now what we're seeing, especially like in the creator economy, is this diversification. You think about the millennials today, and they're like, that's crazy. I don't want to just have to, impress one person, one boss, because that one person can like fire me, right? You want to be able to, have this free agency, right? And with that, you want as many diverse revenue streams as possible, as many different customers as possible, as many different platforms as possible. You're not trying to create your own, right? You want to be able to be on part of as many to de-risk like your revenue. And I think that's where like crypto can come in for these creators. And I was watching a podcast with Blake Robbins and Gary Tan, and what's interesting is that it's hard for these creators to monetize, but they have millions of followers, right? And so what you're seeing now is startups, instead of buying ads on Facebook and Instagram and giving the platform their money, what they're trying to figure out, and this is what's super interesting when it comes to tokens, and I think this is going to be the next step. Startups are saying, hey, influencer, we'll give you 1% of, or whatever that percentage share of equity in our company if you like what we do and you can promote. And they get more bang for the buck, and it aligns incentives. It's not a transactional thing of one-time purchase. And legally that's hard to do, right? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, it really makes me think of, just like the same kind of model that, token is social tokens are enabling, but, as in the real world and with the tools and legal tools of real world currently, you have to overcome like tons of frictions to be able to involve people in your venture. And so basically that, company are only saying that, it's worth it with influencer for now. And so they're willing to take the risk and, going through the legal, things of, issuing equity or whatever, or giving some equity or to someone. But I mean, with social tokens, that's something that you can do with pretty much everyone, and not only like, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's super easy, right? And it's like super fast and it's super liquid depending on how you structure it, and it's dynamic. There's like so much that can happen. So if a community were to tokenize, they could help with distribution from a startup. The startup buys that community token, makes the price go up. The community is incentivized to promote. There's a lot of things there. You can actually have communities that like buy each other's tokens, and that would be like a tokenized partnership. And a lot of the paperwork, it's just so fluid and dynamic. I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface on things like that. And this is what really excites me, because I think the groundwork has been laid in like the last decade and a half of like social. Now people are, and with the backdrop of the pandemic, to be able to experiment. And I think that this is a really exciting time. Like I remember old enough to understand the kind of when user generated content, UGC, when the web was going from 1.0 to 2.0, there was this energy and this excitement. There was also this like IPO.com boom and then crash. And when I reflect back on that, I see that the crash was actually really great because it gave people freedom to experiment. And you got to know who was in it and why they were in it. And it like removed a lot of the noise from the room. I think that what we've seen in like 2018, 2019, leading up to 2020 was that bear market. And this is where we were freely able to experiment with DAOs, with the tech. And I think in 2020, we're actually having, and I think, and this might be some confirmation bias, but I think that this is the beginning of that window where you'll see this collision course start with Web 2 and Web 3 and experimentation happening.
When you're saying Web 2 and Web 3, are you saying about referring to users or projects and companies, like the collision?
I think it's
or
really
like,
going to
market fit, maybe.
Yeah, I think on the Web 2 side, it's going to be coming from like, you know, I don't know what you want to call them, influencers, creators, all these people that like have gathered a huge following, right? And what they're doing now is they're trying to convert from Twitter to like Substack, right, with the newsletter, or, you know, Patreon, because they need to monetize. I think social tokens allow for that, being able to convert that social capital into another asset class. And I think this is where that collision will start to happen, and new forms of like advertising that are more aligned from an incentive perspective. And then we have all this research in years now when it comes to different DAO governance models and what works practically by, you know, I've been in the Meta Cartel weekly calls for like over a year and a half in the town hall meetings. And you see a lot of projects from like Meta Cartel that have been spawned off from it, right? And so when we started with Moloch, we're just like, can we just coordinate? And now we have Moloch V2 and I'm helping work on Moloch V3. It's really about the network effects of these DAOs and being able to capture the network effects. And so you have DAOs that are networked with each other. I think that's going to be the next thing. So it's really kind of unlearning kind of the mental model of, okay, it's not about recreating an organization on the blockchain in the mental model of like corporations that exist legally. Yeah. It's about these communities and being fluid and being able to interconnect and be able to move dynamically. It looks a lot more like a game, I think. It looks like an MMO.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I mean, at least for the crypto space. So I think like there's some, since like we've been, you know, we started chatting, I think we both like, you know, seeing trends in different places and kind of relating them to our space or what we do. And, you know, there was this thing like, this guy, Mr. Beast, like this YouTube influencer, YouTuber who tweeted about, you know, investing in influencers and all these things. So, you know, we can see in many different ways that things are warming up. There's also, of course, like COVID and lockdowns that, you know, made my relatives, you know, click about what I do. Why like about 6 months ago, it was like total, you know, blank. And so you can definitely feel these things. But yeah, I'm wondering, as we go, if there are things like that. We're talking about this intersection or collision between Web 2 and Web 3. To me, it was, you know, kind of like fun and amazing to see that in the end, like creators and creatives also, you know, as I'm, you know, part of Superhero as the community person, like digital art is definitely something that has been blowing up crazy. And, you know, there's this thing about, you know, competing on markets and creating markets. And Superhero has definitely been creating a market for digital art, like in the past. And I think that's like one of the first projects which get like traction from real world people and those things. I'm kind of like wondering, like, if you, I mean, if you see keeping it going with like creators, and also from what you see, I'm wondering like if creators are the only type of people currently kind of using these tokens. I mean, there are definitely like some um, crypto companies, crypto communities as well. I think yeah, that's what I wanted to. Uh, there was this DAO Rush Week thing like a couple months ago, and that's the first time I really started participating in many different communities at the same time. And to me, like, I think yeah, that's in crypto we started using the tools that we're building, but there are these trends out there that need to be embraced as well, and that we're colliding with currently. So I'm wondering like what's your vision and this collision and how you've seen it evolving, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that we're in this space. There's a graph that talks about innovators, early adopters, early mainstream, and then late majority, early majority, and then late majority. And then there's this chasm from the early adopters to early mainstream. And I think really that is going to be the issue to deal with. And I think it's going to be an interesting contention between the typical, I guess, cypherpunk ETH maxi mindset, pseudonymity, self-sovereignty, not your keys, not your wallet, like not your coins, all of that, which I agree with. And what I do think though, that it causes a lot of friction. And what we're going to do, I think, to order to cross that chasm is go from default advanced or hard mode to default easy mode, where you have this like progressive notion of decentralization. And what's really, really challenging is not to just rush towards social tokens, because we can have easy UI, UX, all of that, but it comes at this trade-off or sacrifice of centralization. But and I don't think centralization itself is necessarily bad, it's lack of an exit that is bad.
For sure. Yeah.
Right? And so if you can create these systems that make it easy to onboard, there might be some extended trust assumptions here when it comes to centralization, but as long as there's an exit at the end, so a user goes from novice to intermediate to advanced mode, the more that they have funds underneath their management, they can learn about key management, right? Like having to learn about key management when I just want to spend $3 or $4 in ETH, it's like it's a no starter, right? It's an incentive disalignment. But if I have like half my worth, like in crypto, eventually as I'm able to accrue and understand things, I'm going to want to learn how to manage my own keys, and I want to do all that. So I think it's this like crossing the chasm from like early adopter to early mainstream. We need a path from a usability perspective, not just UI UX as in like it being easy, but a UI UX in terms of like, how do we progressively decentralize and allow users, when it comes to when they want to like go from easy mode to intermediate mode to advanced mode. And so, I think we're about there though. We have like, so with Metacartel, it was started for like meta transactions, right?
Yeah.
Went from meta transactions as the UI UX usability kind of hope to then the gas station network. And then now we have things like MakerDAO with being able to do off-chain permits for approvals.
Yeah.
I think, and then with all the layer 2 solutions that are existing now when it comes to like K channels, connects, Starkware, Loopring, Optimism, there's Matic, there's so much to Seller, there's so much to choose from now. And so I think the building blocks for that UI UX are and without the sacrifice of eventually being able to decentralize.
Yeah. I think it really makes sense. I mean, go ahead, finish your.
Oh no, that's what I was going to say. And then in terms of that context, in the backdrop of like the pandemic, and then like what's happening in Web 2 and Web 3, I think the other kind of really early kind of signs that I've seen from those that have worked with influencers, these agencies. What we're seeing is these agencies for brands are not reaching out to influencers anymore as much, right? Because I think that industry has matured a bit. And what these brands are trying to do is build up their own communities. And this is what startups are starting to do too, right? It's like this community first development. And we're seeing very, very early signs of brands wanting to tokenize their customer base or their fan base and creating it's kind of like, the new form of a loyalty program, essentially. And I think this is where like NFTs can totally come in, right? Where you have badging or you have signaling from like a profile perspective. And you see this a lot in games too, right? And so I think that, it's going to get there, and I don't know how long it will take. A year ago, I would say it's kind of years away, but it feels like with everything that's happened globally, the window has like fast forwarded by at least a couple of years. And so, it's going to be interesting, kind of how this evolves. I'm not exactly sure, but I feel like it's inevitable.
Yeah, I definitely think. I mean, I definitely felt it as well. I don't know. At some point earlier, a couple of months ago, there were like several NFT platforms launching their tokens, and could definitely feel the kind of like renewed like understanding. Also, there was the ICO boom, and like at this point, tokens were like unfortunately as well, like seen by most projects as just a means to fundraise. And then what should we do with all those tokens that we have, but we have had like many iteration cycles on top of that, many trial and failures, and that's what you said, like the fact that we're able to experiment is what makes the space unique and make it goes so experience so quickly and grow quickly, and now almost reaching like the mainstream in different ways. But yeah, I think that we're seeing like we're seeing. I really felt that, and as a person, like for example at Super, we're definitely actively thinking about how to bridge kind of the community with the platform, and I definitely think that that circles back to the conversation we had earlier on social is like eating each and every business and thing that A16Z taught about. It's really that you have to build things in. And yesterday we had this conversation with my flatmate about Spotify, and he's in the music industry, and I don't know much about Spotify, but he told me that Spotify was like the shareholders for Spotify were mostly like music majors and things like that, and the Spotify was still losing money or today or something like that. And so basically, like, this is a company that almost like doesn't make a profit, although it's like highly successful, but it's supported by all these major industry players, and in the end, and like even though that's even though you have all this power in one place, like artists still don't make a proper living from it, or they can't. And so and now like different shareholders, like for example like Tencent, are gaining ground in many different gaming companies and whatever. And I think that these kind of decisions, whether you're like Tencent or not, to have like shareholding in Spotify, it could be something that users would have a say about, and that's something that I think also is coming more and more into these platforms that users. You see new social networks like Arena, this design social network, where users really have a say about things, who have been playing with new subscriptions models from scratch, letting people really have a say in the being aligned with the platform, and really like avoiding things like ads and stuff that we now know are sometimes counterproductive. So yeah, overall, I really feel that there's this trend. And to come back on what you said earlier about these levels of decentralization and levels of it's kind of, yeah, I really agree with what you said on the fact that it's about, when you're a YouTuber and you're just starting, you're just uploading a video with your and recording it with your webcam, or recording with the most basic software, and maybe it doesn't really look good, but at some point you have a studio, you have a team, and you become professional at what you do, and so you take the right gears and whatever. And so I kind of see the progression curve the same way for crypto or for any business or anything in life. Like you just get more serious and you have to be able to, and that's probably what you guys are also trying to do with at Abridged, like creating this kind of curve, different flavors of decentralization that people can use.
Yeah. We just want to make it easy to use, and really the thesis is just mainstream adoption, however we can, and looking at it. And with crypto, it's as much learning as it is unlearning. So I think what we need to do is focus. Even though we want to eventually cater to the mainstream, it's really starting with the super fans, the hot core, which is Web3 native, and servicing them. And being able to understand the ethos of like self-sovereignty and never lose hold of that, and then take that toward the mainstream. And really, I think we're beginning to get this, getting to a point where we're going from the early adopters to the early mainstream, and there's this big chasm in between. And I think that's what we're starting to try to tackle, is how do we cross that chasm, whether it's organizing via DAOs within like a chat group to make it easy to like launch an Aragon Moloch or DAO stack or Colony DAO within familiar interfaces, and then education when it comes to like key management. There's a bunch of different ways that we can like collectively cross the chasm, and I think that I think is going to be the evolution of the Ethereum ecosystem as we go forward. It's kind of interesting to watch on crypto Twitter. People talking about like Bitcoin versus Ethereum and all of that, and talk about price and the flippening and whatnot. But I think it serves the ecosystem to think more broadly about like mainstream adoption and how we're going to cross that chasm. And it's hard though, right? Because it was this Ethereum 4-5 years ago was like
layer one chain, right?
Yeah. And now you have with Bitcoin, and so I get all the maxi conversations, the maximalists that fight. But I think we need to really just try to shed that mentality and talk about like crossing that chasm to early mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, I think like reminds me of what you said earlier. Like, I think time is also something, and I think like when you were thinking about, I mentioned the Spotify example with ownership and users having that, seems so logical to me now that I'm been in the space for some time, and that governance and are becoming more and more familiar to me. But time is definitely something, and also like I guess with unfortunately like with the conjuncture like and the way things are going in different places, like some of the values and the things that blockchain are enabling, like being able to be self-sovereign, to to be unstoppable in different ways, to own your assets, and also like be able to make to just take care of yourself in different ways online, because like sometimes like for many people, and we've seen that already with crypto, like online is like the direct environment that is available to people cannot really cater for all their needs or whatever. So there's definitely like the time factor to crossing the chasm in terms of like social and trends and stuff. And so I definitely agree with that. There's one thing I'd like to mention before we end this conversation, And it's very like concrete topic about the platforms that you guys are currently using as a company. So basically, you're integrated with Discord, with Telegram. I guess like Discord went like Twitch went 2x the number of users that they had just during the lockdown period, and so for now like Discord is getting all this like network effects of ecosystem of bots and also of communities, because like it's much easier to jump from one community to another when it's just like you have both communities on Discord. But yeah, what you're thinking in terms of is Discord going to be the thing for communities, or are we going to need something more bespoke, which I think over the longer term will come. But yeah, I'd love to have your take on that.
So full disclosure, I used to, back in the gaming days, work with Jason Citron. He's the CEO of Discord.
Shit.
So
Okay.
I have an affinity toward Discord. So that said, though, I do believe that the momentum is going toward Discord. I think like the overall user base, when I looked at the latest stats, I think Telegram is bigger, but I think Discord is growing much faster. And Discord just seems like kind of a match made in heaven for those that are wanting to do crypto because of the gaming roots and just their, the way that they approach product for gamers, like trolling each other and all of that. Like they have the kind of, there's this Venn diagram where it's like, hardcore gamers and crypto. It's like there's an intersection.
Stronger than that, yeah.
And I think, when you think about like game design, economies, when you think about all of that leveling up, like it just fits. Like I really think like a DAO is really not allowing people to go inside a virtual corporation, but it's actually taking that virtual corporation and allowing people to express themselves in the world. So it's basically like LARPing, essentially, is what you're doing with a DAO, right? You're taking your virtual assets and you're having them have meaning in the outside world.
Sure.
Really, that's what a DAO
is. You're bridging towards, right?
Yeah, right. And it totally fits with gaming. So I do see the trend and the uptick, not just inside crypto, but just like you were saying, just because of the pandemic. And I think timing is great. And I think Discord is a great product. And they really have security and privacy kind of at top of mind because of gaming roots. And it's going to be really interesting to watch them grow from like a gaming core to like a really mainstream product.
Yeah.
It seems like they have the right recipe. So I'm very bullish on Discord. I think like Telegram will be there. I think it's going to be what's really going to be interesting, because people ask me, like, because we have like hundreds of communities that are like are managed using the Collabland bot, and they're like, okay, what is like the one community that I should join? And I really don't think that there's just going to be one community that will be for your persona, because then
you're too complex, right? You're
right. You're going to have many communities, and really, what it will be is going to be like, okay, well, I see this person's profile, and 80% of their token holdings are similar to mine. So, not going down the whole identity rabbit hole. Like the tokens that you hold, the social tokens that you hold, is an expression of what you pay attention to.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like what how you express.
That's the new fashion or the new art. I mean, that's the same kind of reflecting your personality through like the things that you own and the things that you participate into. That's definitely
And I think in the same way, what we really want to like look at is how do we maximize the different distribution platforms? How do I weave Twitter, Twitch, Reddit, Discord, Clubhouse, whatever? How do I weave them all together to be able to keep my community going? So I don't think it's going to be one platform that's going to like take over everything. It's going to be the communities that know how to weave a really solid loop between all these distribution platforms. So you're not beholden to one. Just like it's for a user, it's not going to be just one token community that you're going to dedicate your whole life to. It's going to be like a bunch of different tokenized communities. And so it's getting into that kind of mentality as we go from like early adopter to early mainstream. What is the playbook? What are the community templates? What works, and how do we move the communities forward? How are they able to be self-sustaining? I think that, you know, with protocol tokens, the mechanism design is in the protocol itself. With social tokens, the community evolves. So it's more dynamic, and you need some
more complex, right?
Yeah, and so it requires the token to be fundamentally different. The token just reduces from a social token perspective, the coordination barrier, right? But it's not going to do everything for you. And so it's figuring out what are those templates, what are those building blocks that are needed for social tokens, that playbook for, you know, communities to thrive. And that's what's super exciting now, because we're figuring all of that in real time out right now. And there's some successful, you know, communities out there that are, you know, just formed and are able to grow. I was actually looking this morning at Whale, and I was looking at their Discord. They had 70 people in the audio stream.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Like, in real time, like they're able to coordinate all those people, and so it is pretty interesting, right? And I think we're just scratching the surface here. So yeah, I think it's hard to know where the future is going to go, but you know, just want to be involved and be in the mix and be in the middle of it. To have a seat.
Yeah, the more, you know, as a pretty young person, like the more I spend time in this environment, like this kind of like pioneer space, the more I'm, you know, I understand that, you know, participating in this like is more akin to swimming into like the sea, or with the swimming with the currents, and you know, and kind of going with the flow, rather than just like building blocks one by one and just like putting them very cleanly on top of each other. It's really like this chaos you have to thrive into, and I think that's one of the most thrilling thing in the space.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, I feel the energy, and it's really all about the energy. And I see it, and this is why I'm so enthusiastic, you know. And so, you know, you have to kind of temper that with like realism and what's realistic. But you know, I'm here for the energy.
Cool, man. That was really great to have you. I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope people watching also picked up some cool things. And I had a great time with you, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great. And let me know how I can help further.
For sure.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll keep following what you guys do, and I mean using it every day probably, because I use it. I use it on a regular basis, managing different communities. So we'll ping you through the support channel maybe.
Yeah, feedback is always welcome. Please, we thrive on feedback. That's the only way we know where to go, is through feedback. So please.
Cool, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks.
See you around.
All right.